2024. The year America decided to snort political absurdity like it was the last line of coke at Hunter's house. First, we had Joe Biden, whose mind played hide and seek with reality, often losing. His public appearances were like watching a live stream from the Alzheimer's ward, where the only policy was, where again? His team swore he was as sharp as a well-honed pencil, but that pencil seemed to have been chewed to a nub by a distracted toddler. Then came Kamala Harris, the VP selected not for her political acumen, but for her ability to hit every diversity checkbox, like she was playing political bingo. Political bingo? Goodness, maybe it's contagious. She won the Democratic primary without a single vote because, in this new age of democracy, why let people decide when you can just crown someone? Her speeches were so incoherent they made you long for the days when and were considered eloquent. But the Rio clown show was Tim Walz, the Minnesota governor who decided to play dress-up with his military career. He claimed he was a command sergeant major who deployed to combat zones, but the truth was as elusive as his battalion in Iraq, which he conveniently missed by retiring just in time. His tales of valor was so exaggerated they'd make even Paul Bunyan blush. And let's not forget his sudden, mysterious claim about his sexuality. It was like he was trying to win an award for the most confusing identity crisis since Schrodinger's cat. The media, those fearless guardians of truth, were so convinced Kamala and Walz would make Trump look like a sideshow act. They predicted a victory so grand you'd need a telescope to see the end of it. But their forecasts were about as reliable as a weather report from a psychic parrot, aka E. Jean Carroll. Come election night, Trump didn't just win. He crushed his opponents like a cartoon anvil on a coyote. He became the 45th and 47th presidents, proving that if you're going to beat someone, you do it so decisively that they question their entire existence. He trounced not one, not two, but three figures with such a spectacle it was like watching a heavyweight champ in a pillow fight. 2024 will go down as history as the year America decided if we were going to be a laughingstock, we might as well be the best at it. It was a year when the punchline was on us, and Trump was the only one left standing, holding the mirror up to our absurdity and laughing to the White House in 2025. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the CF Dalton podcast, part 2. I'm not really sure how long I'm going to make these things, but I don't know. I figured if the Hakatua chick could, do something with this, why can't I? Anyway, if you missed the first episode, hi, my pen name's CF Dalton. My name's Christopher Fennell. I'm a disabled veteran and husband, and I have 2 stepdaughters and 1 step-granddaughter. I never really liked the term step. It always sounded like close but no cigar to me. But there you go. And welcome to our first day of 2025. Leave a comment. How many of y'all have any resolutions this year? And let's be honest, how many of us have had a New Year's resolution from last year that we're trying to fix this year? Should be a lot of fun. One thing y'all need to be reminded of, and I think a lot of people need to be, and it's not anyone's fault other than, Protestants don't really celebrate holy days. But today in the Catholic tradition, this is the Solemnity of Mary, the Mother of God. And this day honors, Mary's role in being the mother, the Mother of Christ. And it was officially declared at the Council of Ephesus in 431. For Catholics, this is a day of obligation, which means if you can't make it to other ones, make it to this one, much like Christmas and Easter and things like that. And the solemnity, it just serves as an opportunity to reflect on Mary saying yes, being willing to carry the Word made flesh inside of her. And this is probably going to ruffle some feathers here, but I think way too many Protestants overlook Mary. They overlook her role as just being a run-of-the-mill thing. It was a big deal. What another thing that people tend to overlook, and some people aren't aware of it, both Joseph and Mary are descendants of David. And the reason that's important is because David, throughout history, is the one who kept Abraham's line going. The reason that's important is Abraham was promised that he would have a family that was as numerous as the stars and that were significant in the world. Now, Jews see that as being Israel proper, and while I acknowledge that they were God's and are God's chosen people, I kind of take a different outlook on it. Just the idea of it wasn't a line for Israel, it was a line towards Christ. And the more people understand that, I think the more people can appreciate Christianity for what it is. It's the building block of the entire West and most of the world in most places. But none of that would have been possible without the solemnity of Mary, without her being the one who carried the Word made flesh. And I think it comes down to a lot of the culture we have today where being a mother is kind of looked down upon. It's kind of seen as, you're settling. You're not having a career. Probably the most powerful thing that a woman could ever do is ensure that there are more people in the world. This isn't me being sexist and saying, woman, you need to be in the kitchen, barefoot, pregnant, with a baby on your hip, okay? Not saying that. I'm just saying that it's kind of insulting to say that bringing forth new life, raising the next generation, it's kind of insulting to say that that's a settling thing. That's beneath you. Because it's the one superpower that has kind of always been acknowledged throughout history. I know some people might be aware of those, some of those fertility goddesses that were carved in Babylon and, Iraq. You've probably seen them. I'll put a picture up here somewhere. But that was always considered a superpower. You are creating more people for the world. So, and this is my issue I have with feminism. Feminism has never been a war against men. It's always been a war against women, against maternity, against femininity. And some women kind of take it as an insult when we say the fairer sex. Well, try as he might, a guy can't have a baby. I'm sorry, I know some weirdos on the internet here think that's a thing. It's not. But it's interesting to me that the role of a woman has been diminished in favor of women to act more like men. Don't act more like men, ladies. You're not going to be happy, I promise you. What ends up happening most times is, and I know people that were like this. She's going to be a career boss woman until she's 37 and she has 3 eggs left. And then she settles, has a baby, and gets divorced. And that's the best that could happen. I know some women who they bought into the lie long enough that they're not able to have children. That's why I find Mary in such a high regard. That's why the church sees her in such a high regard. She is, in essence, the ideal of womanhood. She's the ideal of what a woman should be in this world. So today, if you're not going to go to Mass, either because you're Well, if you're a Catholic, you need to go to Mass. Go ahead and schedule that right now. But if you're not, at least think about the idea that this 13-year-old girl accepted being the mother of Christ. The Word made flesh and raised him to be who he became, the centerpiece of the West. Chapter 1, Rest in Peace, Jimmy Carter. Something's interesting to me, and there was a article that was written in First Things. It's an academic journal. They're not a sponsor, I'm just a fan. It was written by Daniel Lipinski, I hope I'm saying that right, talking about Jimmy Carter was really the last pro-life president for Democrats. He supported the Hyde Amendment, and that restricted federal funding for abortions and appointed, a Catholic cabinet secretary to enforce it. So he was involved with it. For his many mistakes, his many blunders, his many faults, he understood that maybe if you shouldn't be killing babies, his Justice Department even defended the lawsuit, leading to a successful Supreme Court ruling in 1980. Now, today, the Democratic Party, as we all know, has kind of moved away from those pro-life positions, with pro-choice advocates dominating the party's, direction. Carter's legacy didn't really alter the party's trajectory on abortions, but it is fascinating that he was the last truly pro-life Democrat. It's kind of sad in a way, because it's a part of his legacy that I think often gets overlooked. And don't get me wrong, getting rid of the Panama Canal, being involved in a couple of uprisings, our Iranian hostages, which he did get free, but, Reagan got the credit. I'll give credit where it's due. Democrat, Republican, weirdo. If they get it right, I'll give them their due, But I just find it interesting that throughout all of the media that's been out, for the past several days, since he's passed, no one brings that part up. I wonder why they won't. Could it have something to do with the idea of, safe, legal, and rare? That's been out the window since the early 2000s. Now it's abortion is basically your, reproductive health care. I don't know, just a quick thought. I just found that kind of fascinating, and I'll give one more thing, and I think I'm gonna go ahead and call it a day with this podcast. Again, if you like it, let me know. If you don't like it, let me know. And if your comments are particularly nasty, you might be able to win the tweet of the day. I'm going to lead us to our second and final chapter. Do you have to be stupid to believe in God? Final chapter, is it stupid to believe in God? Now, there's a book by Spencer Clavin called, Light of the Mind, Light of the World. And it's basically a refutation on Richard Dawkins' idea that belief in God is akin to stupidity or ignorance, contrasting with his more historical and philosophical ideas. It discusses, that often misconstrued idea that science has made religion obsolete. What Clavin argues in this book is that while science explains the mechanics of the universe, how the gears turn, it doesn't address the question of why, in terms of meaning, where religion can provide some answers. if we are just meat sacks and everything was a kind of a cosmological accident, then yeah, he's right. There's no reason to care about religion if that's the thing. The problem is the only argument that people like Richard Dawkins has is a condescending, dismissal of whatever they can't explain. They think it makes them sound smart. Well, one of the pieces in Light of the Mind, Light of the World talks about historical figures like Pierre-Simon Laplace, who dismissed the need for a God hypothesis in explaining celestial mechanics. He kind of was reflecting on a long-standing tension between scientific inquiry and religious faith. But the argument that's made by the thinkers throughout history, you think of Pascal, you think of Newton, were not only religious, but saw no conflict between their science of work and faith. Case in point, a lot of people like to ignore this, but Charles Darwin was a priest. I mean, he wasn't a Catholic priest, but he was a minister. And his idea of evolution, it doesn't go against the idea of religion in any way. It's just trying to explain the mechanisms. When Newton was setting down his laws of physics, he wasn't trying to dismiss God. He just wanted to understand how God does the things he does. And that's how science works. You figure out the how. The problem is, when you get to that why, what's the point? Why do we have a whole bunch of little balls floating around this nuclear sun? Well, science can't answer that. It can say how it works, and they're very good at that, to be clear and to be fair. And Clavin goes on to say that, faith can be rational, and pointing out that the belief in God doesn't necessarily require abandoning reason, but it can coexist with it, offering a more philosophical and evidential arguments for the existence of God. Case in point, the Lord said, "Let there be light." Well, isn't that kind of what the Big Bang is? Let there be light. Bang! There's light. That's kind of what he's going for here. And it also touches on how the dismissal of religion as stupidity can have a broader cultural and moral implication, leading to a society that lacks a moral compass or communal values that would have been underpinned by religious narratives. And here's where I'm going to get in trouble. If you're not religious, you can't be moral. It's not possible. You have preferences. You have no standard of why you believe what you believe. I believe that Christ is the way, the truth, and the light, and no one can go through the Father but him. If you don't have that assurity, you just have Pilate's question of what is truth. And I'm just grabbing this off the top of my head. Is it Marx's dialectical materialism, basically the absolute truth that says there are no absolute truths? Wrap your head around that. But if there is no absolute truth, why can't a man be a woman? Why can't a woman be nothing? Why can't people kind of live however they want and have no consequences for their actions if there's no truth? And that's kind of what this book gets to. Saying that science and religion don't have to butt heads. Because when it comes down to it, they're all part of the same coin. One is the why, one is the how. And I think that's all that's all I have at this point. If you enjoyed, please, give me a follow, give me a share. It's a small thing to ask, but it does mean a lot. I'm going to try to see at the very least if I can get one of these done a week. Until then, stay safe, go to church. Today's a holy day, and God bless. Take care.